Soraya Varela was the envy of millions, a picture-perfect wife to social media icon Elias Varela, living a glamorous life in a luxury Mexico apartment. But beneath the filtered photos and lavish vacations, a chilling truth lurked in the shadows. When Soraya was found dead under mysterious circumstances, what seemed like a tragic accident quickly unraveled into a web of deception, betrayal, and murder. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered shocking secrets, ones that pointed to the very man who had built his fortune on the illusion of a perfect marriage. Elias Varela had everything a person could dream of, or at least that's what his millions of followers believed. His TikTok account was filled with glimpses of an opulent lifestyle, luxury vacations, high-end fashion, private jets, and lavish parties. His wife, Soraya Varela, was just as admired, a former model with a striking presence. Together they embodied perfection, a couple who seemed untouchable in their world of fame and fortune. Their latest move to an extravagant penthouse in Mexico City only added to their image of success, a sleek, modern apartment in an exclusive high-rise overlooking the sprawling city below. On the morning of February 18th, the routine cleaning service arrived at their residence, expecting another day of tidying up after the influencer couple's glamorous life. As the housekeeper approached the door, she noticed something strange. It was slightly ajar. That alone was unusual. Security in the building was tight, and doors were equipped with state-of-the-art locking systems. A sense of unease crept in, but she pushed it aside, assuming they had simply forgotten to close it properly. Stepping inside, the air felt heavy, unusually still. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Everything was in its place, but something was off. A glass sat half empty on the kitchen counter. A designer purse rested on the couch, as if someone had dropped it there in a hurry. The silence was unsettling. She made her way toward the bedroom, calling out softly to announce her presence. No response. Pushing the door open, she was met with a sight so horrific that she let out a scream, her legs trembling beneath her. Soraya lay motionless on the king-sized bed, her body unnaturally still. The stark white sheets beneath her were soaked in red, a deep contrast against her delicate skin. The air smelled metallic, the unmistakable scent of blood. Her once glamorous appearance was gone, replaced by a lifeless figure, her face frozen in an expression of terror. There were no signs of a struggle, no broken furniture, no shattered glass. It was as if the life had simply drained from her body in the dead of night, leaving behind an eerie stillness. Panic surged through the housekeeper as she fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking as she dialed emergency services. Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air. Police officers and forensic teams flooded the apartment, their expressions grim as they surveyed the scene. The absence of forced entry immediately raised suspicions. Nothing had been stolen. Her jewelry, including an expensive diamond bracelet Elias had recently gifted her, remained untouched on the nightstand. Detectives examined the security footage from the building's entrance. Soraya had last been seen returning home alone the night before. Elias, however, was nowhere in sight. Calls to his phone went unanswered. His social media accounts, usually active with daily posts, had gone silent since the previous evening. Word of Soraya's death spread quickly. News outlets picked up the story within hours, and fans flooded the comments on her old posts, leaving messages of shock and heartbreak. Some speculated an accident, while others whispered about something more sinister. The apartment had been their sanctuary, a place where they showcased their perfect life to the world. Now, it had become a crime scene. As investigators searched for answers, one question loomed over everything. Where was Elias Varela? The investigation into Soraya Varela's death sent shockwaves through the media, and as details emerged, the perfect image she and Elias had built online began to crack. To the outside world, they had been the embodiment of a fairy tale romance. An attractive, wealthy couple whose lives seemed effortless. Their social media accounts were filled with curated snapshots of luxury, tropical vacations, candle-lit dinners in five-star restaurants, and affectionate moments captured in cinematic perfection. But behind the camera lens, the reality was far different. As detectives began piecing together Soraya's final days, they uncovered a woman who seemed to be living a life of quiet distress. Friends of Soraya revealed that she had become increasingly withdrawn over the past few months. Once known for her radiant smile and effortless charm, she had started to avoid social gatherings, cancelling plans at the last minute or showing up, only to leave early. She had confided in a close friend that she felt suffocated, trapped in an existence that no longer felt like her own. The security footage from the apartment building painted an even clearer picture. Soraya had been seen leaving the building multiple times alone in the days before her death. In some clips, she appeared tense, her movements hurried, as if she were avoiding someone. Each time, she returned home, looking drained, her expression heavy with worry. The staff recalled her demeanor shifting over time. Where she had once been warm and friendly, she had grown quiet, barely speaking to anyone. A chilling detail emerged from her private social media account, one that had remained hidden from the public eye. A cryptic post had been shared just days before her death. A simple message that read, "Sometimes the most beautiful cages are the hardest to escape." It was unclear who or what she had been referring to, but for investigators, it was a haunting clue. It suggested that Soraya had felt trapped, her life behind closed doors far different from the one displayed online. As detectives dug deeper into the couple's relationship, new suspicions arose. Elias had spent years carefully crafting his image, ensuring that his brand remained untouchable. His business ventures, luxury sponsorships, and high-profile collaborations depended on the illusion of perfection. His fans idolized him, believing he was living the ultimate dream. But those closest to him knew that he had an explosive temper and an obsessive need for control. Their marriage, which had once seemed effortless, had been under growing strain. Arguments had become more frequent, and those who had seen them together behind the scenes spoke of tension that had been impossible to ignore. Elias's need for dominance extended beyond his social media presence. He dictated nearly every aspect of Soraya's life, from the way she dressed to the events she attended. There were whispers that she had tried to leave him before, but each time he found a way to pull her back in. In the public eye, Elias played the role of the grieving husband perfectly. He released a statement on his social media accounts, posting a black and white photo of Soraya with a caption about his unbearable loss. His fans flooded the comments with support, mourning alongside him, but behind the scenes, the police were beginning to question his sincerity. There were no public tears, no emotional breakdowns. Instead, Elias continued to post promotional content, advertising luxury products and vacation spots as if nothing had changed. It was a strange contradiction. His wife had been murdered, and yet his online presence remained polished, calculated. To detectives, it was more than just a red flag. It was a sign that something wasn't adding up. With Elias's whereabouts still unconfirmed at the time of Soraya's death, the police intensified their efforts to track his movements. The penthouse apartment had shown no sign of forced entry, meaning that whoever had killed Soraya had either been let in willingly or already had access. As the pieces of the puzzle began falling into place, a new theory emerged, one that suggested her death had been anything but random. As investigators sifted through the details of Soraya Varella's final hours, a new and disturbing lead surfaced. Security footage from the luxury apartment complex showed an unidentified man entering the building the night before Soraya was found dead. He wore a dark suit, his face partially obscured by a baseball cap, and walked with purpose, as if he knew exactly where he was going. He did not hesitate, did not glance around nervously. He moved with confidence, slipping past security without drawing attention. What made the footage even more unsettling was the fact that there was no record of his visit in the building's official guest logs. The exclusive penthouse was highly secure, requiring either direct permission from the resident or a registered access code. Yet, This man had entered undetected, stayed for less than an hour, and then disappeared into the night. His presence raised immediate suspicions. If he was there to meet Soraya, why had his visit been unlogged? And if Elias had been away, as he claimed, who had granted him entry? Detectives worked quickly to identify him, cross-referencing security footage from nearby establishments. Their efforts led them to Leandro Cruz, a well-known businessman with deep financial ties in Mexico City, a powerful figure in real estate and investments. Leandro was not just an ordinary visitor. He was someone with influence, someone who did not simply show up without reason. More shocking was his connection to Elias. Public records and business filings revealed that Leandro had been involved in several ventures with Elias, including a luxury brand partnership and offshore accounts linked to sponsorship money. Their relationship, however, was not as solid as it once appeared. Investigators uncovered a series of legal disputes between the two, hidden beneath layers of confidentiality agreements. There had been lawsuits, allegations of contract breaches, and accusations of missing funds. Elias and Leandro had once been allies, but somewhere along the way, their partnership had soured. The discovery of Leandro's visit shifted the investigation in a new direction. Was he there to confront Soraya? Was he working with Elias, or had he come to warn her about something? The timing of his arrival was too coincidental to ignore. The most troubling detail came when authorities checked his travel records. Leandro had boarded a private jet just hours after Soraya's body was discovered. He had left the country in a hurry, as if he knew what was coming. Investigators dug into Soraya's phone records, searching for any communication between her and Leandro. They found encrypted messages, fragments of conversations that hinted at something much bigger than an affair. One message stood out among the rest. "I know what he's doing. I can't be part of this anymore." It had been sent just days before her death, addressed to Leandro. This single line changed everything. It suggested that Soraya had uncovered something dangerous, something she wanted no involvement in. If Leandro had been her last hope, her final attempt to escape whatever she had found out, then his sudden departure only raised more questions. Had he tried to help her, or had he silenced her to protect himself? At the same time, Elias continued to act strangely. Rather than staying out of the spotlight, he maintained an active online presence, posting carefully curated content that made it seem as if he were mourning yet still dedicated to his brand. He had not made any public appearances, nor had he met with the investigators handling the case. His avoidance was telling. The forensic team found another chilling clue. Soraya's phone had been wiped clean of most of her recent messages. Someone had accessed it after her death, deleting conversations and erasing evidence. The only way this could have been done was if the person had known her passcode or used biometric access, which narrowed the suspect list down significantly. With Leandro on the run and Elias behaving suspiciously, authorities faced a crucial turning point. The evidence was pointing towards something far more sinister than a random attack. It was clear that Soraya's death had been planned, and the people closest to her were the ones with the most to hide. The deeper investigators dug into Soraya Varela's life, the more apparent it became that her death was no isolated crime. It was part of something much darker. As more details surfaced, the perfect image of her marriage to Elias continued to unravel, revealing a life of deception, control, and hidden danger. The key to unlocking the truth lay in financial records. Authorities traced a series of offshore transactions linked to Elias, finding large sums of money being funneled through multiple accounts in different countries. Some of these accounts had direct connections to Leandro Cruz, the businessman who had visited Soraya the night before she died. Others were linked to shell companies with no clear purpose, their only function seemingly to move money without detection. Soraya had been financially dependent on Elias for years. Though she had her own career before their marriage, most of her assets were eventually tied to his businesses. What investigators uncovered next was even more disturbing. Soraya had recently been trying to regain financial independence. Bank statements showed that she had quietly opened a new account under her maiden name just weeks before her death. She had begun transferring small amounts of money into it, seemingly preparing for something. When authorities interviewed those closest to her, they discovered she had been making discreet inquiries about divorce. A lawyer she had spoken to in confidence confirmed that she had been looking for ways to protect herself legally and financially, though she had not yet filed any paperwork. This revelation changed everything. If Elias knew about her plans to leave, then his motives suddenly became much clearer. He had built his empire on the illusion of a perfect marriage, and a very public, messy split could have cost him everything. At the same time, Leandro Cruz was still nowhere to be found. His disappearance had only fueled speculation, leading some to believe he had played a direct role in the crime. However, as investigators continued to examine Soraya's private messages, it became clear that Leandro had been more than just a business rival. He had become an informant. Their encrypted messages revealed that Soraya had been in possession of something dangerous. Documents that proved Elias had been involved in fraudulent business dealings. She had sent Leandro copies of files detailing illegal transactions, fake sponsorship deals, and money laundering schemes. These were more than just financial discrepancies. They were enough to ruin Elias permanently and even lead to criminal charges. The timeline of events became clearer. Soraya had confronted Leandro with what she had discovered, perhaps hoping he would help her expose Elias. But Leandro, knowing the risks involved, had chosen self-preservation over justice. He had met with Soraya in secret that night, most likely, warning her of the consequences of what she had uncovered. And then, hours later, she was dead. Elias remained elusive. Though he had not left Mexico, he had gone into hiding, refusing to cooperate with authorities. His lawyers released statements insisting on his innocence, painting him as a grieving husband being harassed by law enforcement. But his actions spoke otherwise. Instead of staying to clear his name, he had cut off communication with many of his associates, withdrawn large amounts of cash from his personal accounts, and moved between different properties in an attempt to avoid detection. Forensics had also found another damning piece of evidence: a hidden surveillance system inside the penthouse. While the public security cameras covered the building's main entrances, Elias had installed private cameras within their home, ones that were not listed in the official security records. Some of these cameras had been manually disabled on the night of Soraya's death. The only person who would have known how to access and control them was Elias himself. The case was no longer about proving whether Soraya's death was murder. It was now a race to capture the person responsible before he disappeared for good. With the mounting evidence against him and his increasingly erratic behavior, authorities knew it was only a matter of time before Elias made his next move. And if they didn't act quickly, he might vanish without a trace, leaving Soraya's murder unsolved forever. The hunt for Elias Varela intensified as investigators pieced together the final hours before Soraya's death. Every lead, every clue pointed in his direction, yet he remained just out of reach. His disappearance was deliberate, carefully orchestrated, to evade capture. Authorities tracked his financial movements, monitoring his bank accounts and flagged transactions. Despite his attempts to cover his tracks, they discovered something telling. Elias had withdrawn a large sum of cash just days before Soraya's murder. It was a clear indication that he had been planning something well in advance. Meanwhile, Leandro Cruz was located in Spain, hiding in a luxury villa owned under a different name. When authorities finally confronted him, he refused to speak at first, but the mounting pressure left him with little choice. Faced with extradition and potential charges, Leandro struck a deal. He provided crucial testimony that tied Elias directly to Soraya's death. According to Leandro, Elias had long suspected Soraya was planning to leave him. When he realized she had been gathering evidence of his financial crimes, he saw it as a direct threat. Leandro confirmed that Elias had reached out to him just days before Soraya's murder. In their conversation, Elias had hinted at a final solution to his problems, a way to ensure his public image remained untarnished. Leandro, fearing for his own safety, had distanced himself, but he had also been aware of what was coming. His last visit to Soraya had not been to harm her. It had been a warning. He had urged her to leave immediately, to disappear before it was too late. But Soraya had hesitated, perhaps believing that Elias would never truly hurt her. It was a fatal mistake. With Leandro's testimony, authorities now had enough to move forward. They issued an international warrant for Elias's arrest, alerting border security and placing surveillance on his known associates. His silence online, once seen as a calculated move, was now a sign of his growing desperation. He had spent years meticulously crafting his image, but now the world saw him for what he truly was, a fugitive. Elias's downfall came unexpectedly. He was caught in Guatemala, attempting to charter a private boat to a remote island. His plan had been to vanish entirely, leaving behind his empire and starting fresh under a new identity. But his arrogance had led to his capture. A single misstep, a large cash payment to a local fixer, had tipped off authorities, leading to his arrest. The trial that followed was one of the most highly publicized in years. Fans who had once idolized Elias were now divided, some refusing to believe he was capable of murder, while others turned against him, disgusted by the truth that had been uncovered. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence: Leandro's testimony, the erased security footage, the wiped messages from Soraya's phone, and the financial records she had been collecting. It painted a damning picture of a man who had viewed his wife as an extension of his brand, someone he could control until she became a liability. Elias never showed remorse. Throughout the trial, he maintained his innocence, calling the accusations against him a conspiracy. But the evidence was irrefutable. The jury deliberated for less than a day before delivering their verdict: guilty on all counts. With Elias sentenced to life in prison, justice for Soraya was finally served. But her story left a lasting impact. A cautionary tale about the dangers of illusion and the dark truths that can lurk behind seemingly perfect lives. The world had once admired Elias for his wealth and charisma, but in the end, it was all a facade. His downfall was not just the end of his empire, it was the revelation of a truth he had tried so desperately to keep hidden.